To understand the mechanisms driving balance of payments adjustments in response to a current account deficit or surpluses, we must lay down some key definitions and concepts in regards to the balance of payments. To begin, the balance of payments is a record of all economic transactions between a country and the rest of the world. It includes three main accounts. The current account, typically denoted as CA, is a trade in goods and services, income, and current transfers. The second account is the capital account, typically denoted as KA, captures non-recurring transfers. Examples are debt forgiveness, inheritances, and migrant transfers. They're typically small in value, but still very important to the completeness of the balance of payments. Next, and the last account, is the financial account, typically denoted as FA, tracks international flows of financial assets and determines net capital inflows and outflows. Typically, this looks like something like an investment portfolio or reserve assets. In theory, the balance of payments balance should look like this expression: CA plus KA plus FA equals 0. Another aspect of the balance of payments is errors and omissions. This changes the expression to CA plus KA plus FA plus errors and omissions is equal to 0. Note, as previously mentioned, since the capital account is relatively small, the expression can also be simplified as CA plus FA equals 0. Some outcomes of this: a current account deficient, CA is less than 0, must be financed by a financial account surplus, FA is greater than 0, which leads to a capital inflow. A current account surplus, the current account is greater than 0, corresponds to a financial account deficient. Financial account is less than 0, which leads to a capital account outflow. Moving on to discuss the mechanisms that adjust to respond to the changes in current account, the adjustment to the balance of payments imbalances occurs naturally in floating exchange rate regimes, driven by a supply and demand for currency. The first one we can look at is a current account deficient, which leads to exchange rate depreciation. We can look at these by a step-by-step process. Step 1, trade imbalance. Imports are greater than exports, which leads to an outflow of domestic currency to buy foreign goods. Step 2, increased supply of domestic currency. Domestic consumers sell their currency to buy foreign exchange. Step 3, depreciation. The domestic currency falls in value due to excess supply in the foreign exchange market. The fourth step is the price effect. Exports become cheaper to foreigners, increasing in exports, and imports become more expensive, decreasing imports. The trade imbalance then improves. And the last step, the balance of payments equilibrium is restored. As the current account deficit shrinks, the need for capital inflow declines. The second naturally occurring change is a current account surplus, which leads to an exchange rate appreciation. We can also look at this mechanism through a step-by-step process. Step 1, more demand for domestic goods is going to lead to demand for domestic currency rising. Step 2, domestic currency then appreciates. Step 3, exports become more expensive, imports become cheaper, and trade surplus narrows. And number 4, a current account returns to balance. Moving on to the diagram, we can adjust the balance of payments adjustment through a diagram. Typically, we can see that the horizontal axis shows the exchange rate USD per CAD, US currency per Canadian currency. And the vertical axis represents the quantity of Canadian dollars. To explain this, we can simply explain the curves. The supply curve shows Canadian residents demanding foreign currency. As the exchange rate rises, the Canadian currency becomes more valuable and the supply of Canadian currency increases. And then we can look at the demand curve. The demand curve shows foreigners' demand. As the exchange rate falls, Canadian currency becomes cheaper and the demand increases. We can look at also the depreciation that moves and the appreciation that moves. The depreciation moves left when there is a current account deficit where imports are greater than exports. Supply of Canadian currency increases and the Canadian currency depreciates. Therefore, a weaker Canadian currency makes exports cheaper and imports more expensive, which further improves the trade imbalance. Next, we can look at the appreciation to the right, where there is a current account surplus, where exports are greater than imports, demand for Canadian currency increases, and the Canadian currency appreciates. A stronger Canadian currency makes exports more expensive and imports cheaper, which helps to narrow the surplus. We can make two connections to this concept. We can make connections to the national accounting identity, which looks like something like S minus I equals NX equals current account. S is savings and I is investment. NX is net exports. And the current account is denoted as CA. A current account deficit means savings is less than investment. Depreciation encourages savings and reduces consumption of imports, helping to restore the balance of payments. Another key concept we can connect to the national accounting identity is the double entry accounting. Double entry accounting is a fundamental balance of payments identity. It works as a double entry framework, having a credit and a debit for one transaction. A credit suggests an inflow of money. Typically, an example of this could be exports, foreign investment in domestic assets. And a debit is an outflow of money, typically imports, domestic investment in foreign assets. We can give an example of this. If Canada imports goods, this is a debit. Money flows out. If Canada pays by issuing bonds to a foreign investor, this is a credit. Money is flowing in. Both sides are recorded, keeping the balance of payments balanced with the double entry. Another connection we can make is to net foreign wealth. If a current account deficit happens, this can lead to a country borrowing from abroad, which can lead to foreign liabilities rising. Over time, a persistent deficit reduces net foreign wealth. A current account surplus can lead to a country acquiring foreign assets and then increasing the net foreign wealth. An example of this can be when Canada ran a current account deficit in 2023 of $20.9 billion. Three key points of this is when Canada imported more than it could export. This was financed by capital inflows, foreigners buying Canadian assets. If sustained, this reduces Canadians' net foreign wealth, making it more indebted globally. And then a weaker Canadian currency would encourage exports and discourage imports, narrowing the current account deficit. In conclusion, we can summarize the balance of payments and all the changes that can come with the current account with three key points. Number one, the balance of payments adjustments mechanism, especially in a floating exchange rate regime, relies on exchange rate movements to help correct current account imbalances. The second point, through changes in prices and competitiveness, the currency naturally depreciates in a case of deficit or appreciates in a case of surplus, pushing the economy back towards equilibrium. The last point that can summarize this concept is the dynamic process is central to maintaining a country's external stability, influencing not only trade flows, but also net foreign wealth, long-term debt, sustainability, and policy flexibility. Thank you.